John Jones script, voiceover ready. John Jones entered the world in Rochester, New York, growing up in a devoted household where his father, a pastor, ingrained faith and discipline into his children before they could even take their first steps. The Jones home was ruled by a firm code: faith, discipline, no drugs, no alcohol, and no violence. Yet from that very foundation, a fierce force was born, one that would eventually be unleashed in the UFC octagon. The Jones family remains one of the most extraordinary in sports history, with all three brothers reaching the ranks of professional athletes, a rarity so remarkable they've been labeled America's most unusual sporting dynasty. While his older and younger brothers chased glory on the football field, John chose a different arena, stepping into the world of the UFC. With zero MMA experience, it was as if fate itself had singled him out. After only 3 months of training, he made his UFC debut and, at just 23, became the youngest light heavyweight champion in history. From there, his career took flight like a kite in a strong wind, defending his title an unprecedented 11 times. In 2023, after years of ruling the light heavyweight division, Jones stepped up to heavyweight, taking on Selgain and dismantling the so-called future contender in less than 3 minutes. When the final bell rang, many believed John Jones had secured his place among the sports immortals. But, ultimately, John Jones delivered the knockout to his own legacy with a cascade of jaw-dropping scandals. At a recent press conference following UFC on ABC, Hill vs. Roundtree Jr., UFC President Dana White confirmed that John Jones had officially parted ways with the organization. No spotlight, no emotional farewell, no tears, no applause for a departing legend. Jones later confirmed the news himself with a retirement post on X, a cold, lifeless statement so sterile that some even suspected it had been written by AI. It was a farewell without a heartbeat, perfectly reflecting the hollow closing chapter of his career. Many are calling it the most disgraceful retirement in MMA history, not because Jones lacked ability, but because he chose to vanish quietly, leaving nothing behind but a trail of chaos. John Jones had every opportunity to cement himself as the GOAT, yet he sidestepped and rejected a clash with Tom Aspinall. But the real question is why? Some believe Jones isn't merely avoiding a dangerous challenger. They think he's running from a far darker truth, one capable of destroying the GOAT image he's spent over a decade building. An anonymous source once whispered to the media that Jones might be caught up in a massive, undisclosed scandal, something so explosive that, if it ever saw daylight, it could not only torch his career but put him in serious legal trouble. And let's be real, this isn't John Jones's first dance with controversy. Doping, violence, traffic violations, illegal weapons, these shadows have stalked him for years, clinging to his career like a stubborn stain. Before we dig into the mystery of Jones's UFC exit, there's an old, familiar stench we can't ignore: the smell of performance-enhancing drugs, a ghost that's haunted his legacy from the very beginning. Yes, John Jones, the man once hailed as the flawless fighter, the GOAT of all GOATs, has been wrapped up in doping scandals not once, but 4 separate times. And the kicker? They hit one after the other: 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. The first strike came before his light heavyweight title defense against Daniel Cormier at UFC 182. Jones tested positive for benzoylecgonine, the main metabolite of cocaine. But here's the twist: cocaine wasn't banned for out-of-competition testing at the time. So Jones fought anyway, dominated Cormier by unanimous decision, and walked away with nothing more than a $25,000 fine for violating the UFC's code of conduct. A year later, Cormier was set for the rematch, and then, another bombshell. Just days before UFC 200, Jones tested positive for 2 banned substances, clomiphene and letrozole, both hormone and metabolic modulators. This time, there was no escaping. Jones was yanked from the card, stripped of his interim title, banned for a year, and left with the first major crack in his reputation. Fast forward to 2017, Jones returned, delivered a brutal third-round knockout to Cormier at UFC 214, and looked unstoppable until the results came in. Turinabol, a Cold War-era anabolic steroid, had turned up in his system. The win was erased to a no contest, his belt stripped for the 3rd time, and he sat out for 15 months. By the end of 2018, Jones was cleared to fight again, but the drama didn't quit. Trace amounts of turinabol kept appearing in his samples, forcing the UFC to relocate the entire UFC 232 event just to avoid stricter testing. So what's the truth here? Jones swears he's innocent, but for many MMA fans, the nickname writes itself: not greatest of all time, but greatest on all the time. The scandal surrounding Jon Jones didn't stop at doping. He also found himself entangled in serious legal trouble. On April 27, 2015, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a car accident shook the city. The culprit fled the scene, leaving behind an injured pregnant woman, a pipe used for drugs, a stash of marijuana, and a wallet with one name, Jonathan Dwight Jones. All evidence pointed straight at the greatest natural talent in UFC history. The truth unraveled fast. The media went into overdrive. The MMA world was stunned, fans speechless. A reigning world champion had crashed into a woman about to become a mother and ran. Jones faced a firestorm of criticism. He was sentenced to 18 months probation, ordered to deliver 72 speeches on the dangers of reckless driving, and fined. But the real damage wasn't the punishment. It was the shattering of his reputation, built with blood, sweat, and broken bones, now crushed like glass beneath tires. The UFC stripped him of his title for the first time. It was the initial blow to his championship reign, derailing his career at its peak. And with Jon Jones, scandals never came just once. History repeated itself in March 2020. Weeks after a controversial win over Dominic Reyes, a fight many believed he didn't deserve, Jones made headlines again, but not in the sports section. Police responded to gunshots in the dead of night. They found Jones alone in his car, open bottle of liquor, handgun, no proof of insurance, and a vacant stare, as if the world had already left him behind. He faced charges for DUI, negligent use of a firearm, an open container, and driving without insurance. He pled guilty in exchange for a deal: house arrest, ankle monitor, mandatory safety course. But the golden child of the UFC was now tarnished again. The storm raged on. This time, it hit home. Just before 6 a.m., a call pierced the quiet from a hotel room. Not from a fan, not from paparazzi. It came from Jones's own daughter. Her trembling voice told police her mother, Jessie Moses, Jones's fiancée, was crying, blood on her lip, staining her shirt. When officers arrived, they found Jones intoxicated, slamming his head against a police car hood, as if trying to break everything around him and inside him. He was charged with domestic battery and damaging a public vehicle. Headlines screamed, Jon Jones, from Hall of Fame to jail cell in one night. The domestic charge was later dropped. Jones pled guilty only to vehicle damage, receiving a suspended 90-day sentence. But the stain remained, because the call came from his child, the one person who should have been shielded from this. People began to ask, how many more times? How many more chances? And Jessie Moses, the woman who had stood by him from the very start, became just a shadow in the background of his victory photos. From untouchable genius inside the cage, to a man spiraling outside it. Why does a fighter with everything, talent, fame, wealth, keep throwing it away? Maybe because he was never taught how to be ordinary. Jones grew up bathed in adoration, told he was different, told he was bones unbreakable. Rules were for other people. He was born to shatter limits. But when no one dares to say no, you eventually lose your way. And without someone to pull you back from the edge, the only one who can stop you is you. Some in the MMA world believe Jon Jones suffers from narcissistic personality disorder, trapped in a delusion of absolute power, lacking empathy, always scheming to stay on top. Others think he's fighting a deeper emptiness, a boy turned hero too soon. Loved, then hated, building his own prison, brick by brick. November 2024, UFC 309. The crowd roars as Jon Jones takes down Stipe Miocic, another legend, cementing his dominance in the heavyweight division. Fans are electrified. The next chapter feels inevitable. One name echoes above the noise: Tom Aspinall, the interim champion. A predator